From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, folks. Good morning. Welcome to today's show. It's Thursday, May 13th, 2021. What a show we have today. We'll start off with Colonial initiating restart of pipeline operation after the ransomware attack a mere 4-5 days later. Biden signs an executive order last night that beefs up federal cybersecurity. Apple removed 95,000 fraudulent apps from their app store, and FragAttacks, something that one of our actual viewers brought to my attention yesterday, Matt Lee. We'll talk about that today because that is very, very awesome of it as well. Good morning to Heather, who says she's excited to hear my thoughts on the executive order. Got the alert last night. Yes, the executive order came out yesterday as we were doing the Tech Town Square. If you didn't catch the Tech Town Square last night, let me tell you, we had on Jack Barsky, who is a former KGB agent who has now been living in the States ever since and is a role model U.S. citizen. What an awesome show. We talked a little bit about Russia, the Russian mindset, the mentality, and we talked a lot about kind of the stuff that we should know, especially from our adversaries in cyberspace. So for all of those of you tuning in, thank you so much. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So please make sure to subscribe if you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform. Please make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. That's how we get boosted up, by the way, is your ratings, it's your follows, it's your shares, it's your comments. All of that helps. So thank you so much to all of you. And Heather does say it was a fantastic show last night. It was. I did not want the show to end last night. We were just having such a very fun conversation. So before we get started on today's show, though, a big shout out to our show partners who without them, this show wouldn't be possible. Go and check out KnowBe4, Wistic, and Ativo Networks, because without them, this show would not be possible. You can see more about them in the show notes as well. Now, our ceremonial coffee sip. I don't know what any of you are drinking this morning, but guess what I'm having? If it's your first time tuning in, it's a double espresso. Yes, it is. It's a double espresso. I'm very excited about it. It's my third of the morning. I had we did the other side of cyber at 7 a.m. today. So if you missed that, man, you should go and watch that. We talked if cyber has a PR problem. David asked, does the Town Square show get recorded for review? Yes, it does. You can go to our YouTube channel at CyberHub Podcast and you'll see last night's show right there. You can also catch it on my LinkedIn feed at James J. Azar. You can also catch it on Eddie's LinkedIn feed and on the CyberHub Podcast Facebook page. So you can catch the Town Square, there as well. You can go check it out. So let's get right into some good news for practitioners. I saw this headline yesterday. I got a few text messages from people I know that are within the Colonial pipeline company of families that said, hey, we're restarting everything. And it made me happy. It made me so happy to see them starting to recover. They've been bashed. People have been really kind of cutting down on Colonial. And I think I'm going to say this again. This is the practitioner brief. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm a CISO. I've been in the seat that Colonial's been in. I think most practitioners have. Incident response is difficult. Cybersecurity is difficult. There is a mental toll that takes place. This headline should be a celebration. Do we need to do more in cyber? Absolutely. But what we don't need to do is attack victims of crimes or try to pass judgment or make assumptions when we don't know the facts. Ransomware attacks are common. They happen all the time. They're only going to increase. I have yet to see one thing that stops a ransomware attack. And if you have, I'd love for you to bring it to my attention. So days after it was forced to shut down, Colonial is back up. It will take several days for the product delivery supply chain to return to normal, according to a statement from the companies. Some markets served by Colonial Pipeline may experience or continue to experience intermittent service interruptions. During the startup period, Colonial will move as much gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel as it is safely possible and will continue to do so as they return to normal. as well. The attack, which involved the dark side ransomware, has significant implications, including states declaring a state of emergency, temporary gas shortages sparked by panicked motorists stocking up over fears of gas shortages that were caused by it. Again, like the toilet paper crisis of March of last year, we have a gasoline crisis in May of this year. If people just went about their business, fueled what they needed to, we may have not had this crisis as well. So it's very, very well done. Brent says recovery is in under a week is commendable. It absolutely is. And Lonnie, thank you for tuning in. Lonnie says the pipeline was taken offline as a precaution. Colonial wanted to make sure the attackers didn't have the data about the pipeline. That is also a very valid point. That's why I love the people who tune into this show. Practitioners, common sense. We're not throwing out a bunch of accusations. We'll wait to see what the bottom line is for this specific ransomware attack. What were the TTPs and IOCs? And we'll know probably more about that in the coming months as well. In lieu of this attack, and in lieu of a lot of the media hype and the FUD mongerers of them, of all kinds, President Joe Biden yesterday signed an executive order meant to strengthen the U.S. cybersecurity defenses in response to a series of headline-grabbing hacking incidents. I have a link in the show notes, by the way, so if you're watching us on LinkedIn, it's right there. If you scroll down, I've got the link. I believe it's the third link. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, it's also the third link. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, it's the third link in the show notes. You'll see it right there, directly to the White House entire executive order. A very good executive order per se. So a few things about this executive order, and I'll pull it up here on the screen so you guys can take a look at it. A lot of it is around policy. They've been able to interject a few buzzwords like zero trust into the executive order. They talked about the software supply chain. This one I think is really important, removing barriers to sharing threat information. Now, this was already set up, the NKIC. Now it's under CISA that was run by John Felker, was doing just that. What would be the right thing to do with this specific threat information sharing would be to remove or provide some sort of immunity for organizations. Because from the federal side, there's a lot of information sharing. From the private sector, we have to be very careful about what we share. If we had a sense of immunity that we can take to our general counsel and say that all this information can't be used, even if it's leaked or obtained by someone, it could cause a little bit of a headache. But outside of that, it could never be used against us in a court of law. That would be absolutely amazing. Again, there's a bunch of stuff on here about service providers. There's all kinds of timelines of a 60, 90, 120 day, which is, if you've ever seen executive orders, that's pretty much how they're predominantly written, with some short-term goals to show that the executive order really is working. I think the long-term implications of this is this executive order is going to be a standard going forward for the federal government and the private sector, especially around this. So this one right here, which is the current cybersecurity requirements for unclassified system contracts, are largely implemented. No, they're not. This is, I think, where there's a little bit of disconnect, because CMMC comes in to kind of dictate this for the DoD. And so, there's some stuff on here as well, kind of talking about cloud-based. They want to review the JEDI contract again. It's they want to create a cyber review board, which I think is very interesting, enhancing the software supply chain. I honestly think that we need to pass a federal law that says anything software should have a label with all the products that are in it, kind of like how our food has a label with everything that's inside of it. I think software should have something like the nutritional facts of software would be more effective than something like this. 30 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Commerce, acting through the Director of NIST, shall solicit input from the federal government, private sector, academia, to identify existing or develop new standards, tools, or best practices for complying with the standard procedures or criteria in the subsection of the software supply chain. And NIST shall publish preliminary guidelines for a software supply chain framework, essentially within 180 days of this order. So, James took the words out of my mouth. A software bill of materials, which would be absolutely brilliant. I think that would be very, very effective, by the way, just for the whole industry as a whole. Matt says, good morning, joining us a little late, Matt, but you got a shout out early in the show, buddy. So you may have to rewind when it's all over. And again, the executive order is very extensive, talks about a bunch of different pilot programs, establishing, again, a cyber safety review board. A conversation James McQuiggan and I and JJ had this morning in Clubhouse. My view of this is, if you're going to create an NTSB for cyber, it's going to cost taxpayers billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I don't know that it's going to be very effective in dissuading cyber breaches or responses to that matter. Also, totally prefer nutrition facts by Heather. I also like that as well. So you can see the whole link to the executive order. It addresses some really key parts. If you take away the buzzwords, you take away some of the political fluff that was in there. It's a step in the right direction. And one thing to give credit to President Biden and his administration is they've taken cybersecurity seriously. They've been actively funding more and more cyber security programs, and that's something to be admired at this time. Apple removed 95,000 fraudulent applications from the App Store in the year of 2020. The company's app review team last year rejected roughly 200,000 applications that either contain hidden features or which were found to be spam, copycats, or attempting to trick users into making purchases. An additional 95,000 apps were removed for violating the App Store policies, mainly for performing bait and switch maneuvers, where the app functionality is fundamentally changed, usually to commit nefarious actions after approval within the App Store. Good for Apple, one, for publishing this data, number two, for talking about it, and number three, for really being on top of it. 95,000 apps is a lot. That's about, I think, 30 a day over a year. So yeah, very, very well done by Apple. Why I love the Apple App Store, and why I'm a big supporter of Apple. So hats off to them. So this comes thanks to Matt Lee. Matt Lee put this in the notes yesterday. I was like, what is he talking about? Went and did some research after the show, and lo and behold, here this was. I missed it. FragAttacks, Wi-Fi bugs that are affecting millions of devices. And you go, James, why is this important? I know COVID is waning down and a lot of people are still working from home. But when your Wi-Fi bugs are unearthed and people have old Wi-Fi routers and devices in their homes, because how often do a normal non-IT, non-security person upgrade his router? Go ahead. Guesses in the comments. Go ahead. We'll see, because there is a number for that. The Belgian cybersecurity researcher Matthew Venoff, who discovered the FragAttacks, said in a post on Tuesday that 3 of the vulnerabilities are design flaws in the Wi-Fi standard and therefore affect most devices. Several other vulnerabilities are caused by widespread programming mistake. He said with experiments indicating that every Wi-Fi product is affected by at least one of the vulnerabilities through these frag attacks. Venoff knows his Wi-Fi protocols and how to shred them. He previously discovered the crack attack, a devastating weakness in WPA2 protocol that allows attackers to decrypt encrypted traffic, steal data, and inject malicious code depending on the network config. He also founded the RC4 No More attack, which helped drive nails into the coffin of the RC4 encryption algorithm, as well as the Dragon Blood attack against WPA3 protocols that allowed attackers to steal passwords. There's a awesome video on here. I can't play it because of I didn't set it up for this video, but you guys can check it. The link is also in the show notes. Bugs are not exploded in the wild yet, but yet, folks, yet. Now that this is out there, now that it's been noticed, you bet your sweet tail threat actors are out there doing it as well. So how the bug works, one of the ways these bugs can be abused is to intercept a device owner's information is by tricking the client into using malicious DNS server, as his demo video shows. Those flaws can also be used to compromise routers by bypassing the NAT firewall, which would let attackers go after devices and local Wi-Fi networks. The demo video above demonstrates one example of an attack on an outdated Windows 7 machine. The demo also shows how other vulnerabilities are linked to the process by which the Wi-Fi standard breaks and then reassembles network packets, allowing an attacker to siphon data by injecting their own malicious code during the operation. Heather says that she will confess to having the same one for 4 years before it got replaced. I know people that have had the same router for 10 years, guys. 10. So disclosure of the FragAttack vulnerabilities came after a 9-month embargo, a period in which the Wi-Fi Alliance has been overhauling its standard and guidelines and working with device vendors as they release firmware patches with supervision from the Industry Consortium for Advanced on Security on the Internet, the ICASI. Not all vendors have patched at this point, but the ICASI has published an overview of where they're at in the process. So here's the risk. Everyone uses routers. There's a bunch of design flaws here. There's all the CVEs, all the implementation flaws. You got to go back and look at this. This is really extensive. This is serious. And this kind of goes into the discussion now as we wane off of COVID and we're trying to go back to normal. And going back to normal could mean that we're more open to the idea of people working from home. Does it become the business's responsibility? Meaning, is it my responsibility as a CISO to maybe set up a secured home network exclusively for my employees? And that's a very interesting conversation. It's one that I'm having right now. It's one that I think all of us should be asking this question. Should we do that for employees that are not cybersecurity sophisticated? Again, I know that all of you are like, I have it. I've set it up in my house. I've done it. My kids are on their own network. I'm on my own network. Yeah, we've done it because we're practitioners. But what about the people who aren't and process data and have access to sensitive systems and can get into the crown jewels and maybe fail a phishing test twice a year? Just saying. We got to think how we become business enablers and how we go into the business. And this could be a great way to, one, up the budget a little bit, maybe look at how do we provide personal networks for our most targeted employees in the organization and so forth. So that's it for our practitioner brief today. Folks, thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Tomorrow, we'll have a brand new tech corner, so you'll want to tune in to that tomorrow. CISO talk that I dropped yesterday. You guys will see it. Go check it out. It's part 2 of my conversation with Sam Phillips, the VP of Cybersecurity Architecture over at Wells Fargo. What a great conversation. We talked about how Wells Fargo is preparing for quantum computing and the quantum computing threats. We talk a lot about how the industry has evolved and how innovation and changes in predominant architecture is helping derive cybersecurity architecture and how he's working across the organization to do that. It's a great, great podcast. So go watch the CISO Talk podcast or listen to it on your favorite podcast listening platform. Tech Corner here tomorrow. Another great episode. I'll have Caroline Crandall. She's the chief security advocate for our friends over at Ativo Networks. We're going to be talking about Active Directory and Active Directory threats, especially as now we move into an Azure Active Directory in the past year. What are some of the things we can do to help defend our Active Directory? Kind of a new way of how we're doing Tech Corner. We're going to get a little bit more technical, so you don't want to miss that. That'll be on here live tomorrow on our YouTube channel at 11 a.m. and on your favorite podcast listening platform. So make sure to check that out. Carolyn is a gem, smart, wise, unbelievable. I love having smart people on the show, and Carolyn is definitely that. So go check that out as well. Till then, folks, have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and we'll have a lot more coming your way. Also, next week, RSA, we'll have some really special stuff going on for the week of RSA. Until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, gang. Really appreciate all your comments. And we'll see you again Monday when I'll be back with another Practitioner Brief. Cheers.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.